Do you want to learn how to quit your job, make money online doing what you love, and finally take that next step? In this episode, you're going to learn exactly how to do that from someone who's been doing it for 10 years. Coming up. Hey everybody, welcome to Inspire Your Success podcast. My name is Michael Leonard, former corporate zombie turned lifestyle entrepreneur. I'm on a mission to inspire millions of people to stop settling for average and create the life that you deserve. Each week, I'll be bringing on world-class experts, entrepreneurs, and high achievers to give you the inspiration to take massive action. I'm confident these successful people will give you the spark to create an epic life and business. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Here's your episode. All right, welcome back, Inspire Nation. This is your host, Michael Leonard, and as always, I appreciate you being here and spending some time with me and an awesome guest today. So again, one of the reasons that I got started with this entire brand and podcast and everything I'm doing is because just like so many people, I was miserable in my 9-to-5. No matter how much money I made, I was just not happy. And you know what? You don't have to settle for this any longer. And today's guest is going to show you exactly how to create that laptop lifestyle. And he's been doing it for 10 years. And this is something I think is really, really inspirational because this guy has been doing it since before the laptop lifestyle, and making money from your laptop was really a cool thing. And he's going to share with you his journey, how you can get started, and some tangible next steps. So enjoy this episode with Sean Ogle. Again, Sean, thanks for being here. And guys, enjoy this episode. All right, Sean, well, thanks again for being here with me today, man. Really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, if the episode just half as good as our first convo before we started hitting record, I know it's going to be great. So
hopefully there's something valuable for people.
Oh, yes. No, a lot of value. Like I said, you were kind of the Godfather, right, of the laptop lifestyle, as you just said. So let's go back, though, right? I mean, you have been at this a lot longer than most people, and entrepreneurship seems to kind of have this cool, let's do it, let's get started, it's easy kind of a thing, right?
Totally.
But you've been at it now for about 10 years, right? So kind of take us back to like what it was like, or what made you take that leap? Because I know you were in that corporate 9-to-5 before all this.
Yeah. So it's like, if you go way back, like I've had the most like average upbringing imaginable. It's like you always knew what was going to happen next. So when I was in 6th grade, I knew I was going to go to Oregon State University and study business. 6 months before I graduated, I had a job lined up. I was going to move to Portland and get into finance. It was like always the path of least resistance. It was never like, oh my God, like I'm like, this is what I want to do. It was always just like, this is what I'm going to do. This is just the natural path. So I got into finance in July of 2007, like thinking it was going to be the greatest thing ever. I remember going and buying like my suits. I had like an office with a view. I had a better job than any of my friends out of school. And, obviously July of 2007, not the best time to get into finance. And so by February of 2009, the market had completely collapsed. I was working for a small money management firm. There's only 5 of us. Our clients had lost money. They had lost money. Everybody was miserable. And I'm just like, oh, so this is like what a day job's like. Like, this is what it's all about. And so I had ended up begging my boss in February of 2009 to take 2 weeks off, like vacation time that I had to go down to Rio for Carnival. And so this was like something I'd been saving up for. It took me like 3 months to actually convince him to let me do this. Finally said, okay, went down there, had the most unbelievable time. Like we went hang gliding over the city. We danced in the carnival parade. We went down to Iguazu Falls, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. Like it was one of the coolest experiences ever. And went down with my buddy Ryan. And on the last day, we're like sitting on Ipanema Beach, like drinking out of a coconut, like staring at the like water and girls in bikinis. And we're like, dude, we should be able to do this whenever we want. Like, I'm going to go back to like a miserable Portland winter, have no vacation days left, be in like a terrible financial market. And so we came back, and the day I got back, my boss was like, hey, like really excited to hear about your trip and see your photos, but just so you know, your paycheck's going to be about 20% lighter next month. Everybody across the board's taking a pay cut, and it was either that or we fire you. So we figured that would be better. And so it was just a couple months after that I started Location Rebel and started trying to figure out, okay, how do we do something a little bit different?
So it was kind of that outer, not outer body, but outer corporate world experience that made you realize like, man, there is more out there. Or were you thinking when you were even there, like after college at your day job, were you thinking like, gosh, is this it? Or was that kind of the experience that catapulted it all?
Yeah, that was the big experience. I guess you could go even farther back. I'd never been outside the country before I graduated college, and I had this big elaborate plan to take a 3-month backpacking trip with some friends right after I graduated. And so what happened was I got this job. So my 3-month trip got cut down to 2.5 weeks.
Mm.
And so I took all of my finals like early. I took all my finals on Monday. I left on Tuesday. I skipped my graduation to go like make the most of this trip and just had like most ridiculous, unbelievable time. And so that kind of like planted the seed of like, oh, I want to be able to travel. I want to have some freedom. I want to like have all these experiences in life. And then I got right into that day job and never fully like fulfilled that wanderlust. And so the Brazil trip just like completely like triggered it and was like, oh yeah, like this is something I've got to do. I need more of this in my life.
Yes, absolutely. And experiences are so much greater and cooler than buying things, right? So you learn that very early on. A lot of people don't learn that until they made the money and then they're like, oh wait, what? So at least you got that early on. So when you were there and you're having all this fun, you head back and obviously you get the news about the paycheck. What made you think, okay, I'm gonna start Location Rebel? Like that wasn't really even a thing at that time. I mean, blogging and e-commerce, not like these things that are common nowadays. I mean, that was pretty new. So what made you kind of get into that?
Totally. So there was 2 things that happened that led to me starting the job or starting the blog and kind of doing what I'm doing now. The first is my buddy Ryan, the guy that he was the guy I went to Europe with and the guy that I went to Brazil with. 3 weeks after we got back from that trip, he quit his job and he moved to Hawaii. And it's basically like, at this point, it's like April. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to live in Hawaii. I'm going to work as like a cabana boy at a hotel, or he's like cabana boy / like concierge at a hotel. I'm going to save up. I'm just going to try and like, tread water, like break even so that the following January I can take a world trip. And I'm going to travel until I run out of money. So every day on my lunch break, I was talking to him and he's like, oh yeah, I'm at the coffee shop. I just got done surfing. Gonna go lay by the pool later on. Like he's just living this life and I'm just crunching numbers and hating myself. And so that was like one motivating factor. And then the other thing is actually you said you found me through Side Hustle School podcast. So this is Chris Guillebeau's podcast. So way back in 2000, I guess this was 2009, I had been reading his blog, The Art of Nonconformity. And I found out he had just moved to Portland. So I sent him an email. I think it was literally like 7 or 8 days after I got back from that Brazil trip. Saw that he was moved to Portland, sent him an email, asked him if he'd be willing to meet me for a cup of coffee. And surprisingly, he came back, said, yeah, I'd be happy to. So I had to lie to my boss, tell him I had a doctor's appointment because I didn't have any vacation days left. Went to go meet him over in like, Hawthorne, east side area of Portland, kind of a hipster neighborhood. I'm in my like ill-fitting like Men's Warehouse, like suit and tie. I walk in, he just starts laughing at me and he's like, dude, we're in Portland, right? Like suit and tie, not really a thing. And so he ended up being the one that encouraged me to start the website. He's like, hey, you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. You're saying you want to do all these things. Start the website to hold yourself accountable for everything that you want to do. And so the very first post I created was my bucket list, and I wrote down all the things I wanted to accomplish. And then over the course of the next 11 months, it was working on the site, figuring out what I wanted. And that's what inevitably ended up leading to me leaving my job, selling my car, moving to Thailand. And there's actually a whole chapter about that transition that was in Chris's book, which was kind of cool. His first book.
Wow. There's so many great takeaways from that I hope people really, I want to like make sure they understand that, because the first thing is you reached out to somebody that's like doing what you want to do. Right. I think that is so key. So, and I love that you even left that job to do it, snuck out of there, made up that excuse. That is commitment. So love that. And then, so you had that 11-month time period. So were you thinking like, hey, I can make this work? Were you just trying to blog a lot? Did you have any writing background? Like what were you doing while you still were in that 9-to-5 that you think allowed you to leave in only 11 months? Because that's a pretty good turnaround time. Yeah.
So I had no formal writing training. I mean, I went to, college, so I was always like a halfway decent writer, but, I never studied writing or anything. And I go back and I look at those blog posts from like, 2009 in the archives, and you're just like, wow, this is pretty rough. And so I was basically, I call it my quarter life crisis. Like the site is completely different from what it is now, where I was writing about anything and everything that kind of came to my mind. I was doing a happy hour of the week in Portland, and I was doing, I was writing about previous vacations. I had a post called "What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do," benefits of daydreaming, all this stuff. And what I kind of found was like it was me going through that process of figuring out like what I wanted to do, figuring out what other people resonated with and what content they liked. And it was just kind of being consistent. It was at a time where it turned out there was a lot of other people that were kind of going through their own version of a quarter life or midlife crisis. And I was kind of the one that was actually taking some action on it. And so I think that's how I garnered an audience early on was, oh, this guy's actually doing things. He's being vulnerable. He's putting himself out there. One of the things you look at with someone like Chris or like Tim Ferriss is they both kind of seem like they appeared from out of nowhere. All of a sudden, it was just like, you don't know who they are, then they're everywhere. And with me, it was a little bit more of a slow burn. So even to this day, you can go back to the archives. You can see, oh, he was clueless in a day job, not sure what he wanted to do. Oh, he left the day job. He moved to Thailand. Like he's trying to figure out what to do with his life. Oh, he started freelancing to pay the bills as he grew the website. Oh, and then it's just on and on and on. So you can see the whole progression. And I think that was one of the things that was kind of unique about my site that helped me garner an audience early on.
That's amazing that you documented that, because that's kind of what my blog was when I got started. I was like, is it personal finance? Is it motivation? Is it quit your job? But you got in that habit, right, of creating content and being consistent. And I just released a podcast about this literally 2 days ago about just being consistent, whether you're trying to get better at golf or improve your business, lose weight. It's not a one-time thing, right? So it's all about that staying consistent. So I love that you brought that up. Even though you're writing about happy hours and things like that and everything's different, you were staying consistent, and that's what people like, right?
Yeah, it's consistency and persistence.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing is like, especially when you're getting going, like these days, you start a blog, you think it's going to take off right away. 2-3 months go in, you're still not really getting any traffic. You're not getting any new email subscribers. And so you can be consistent, but if you don't have the persistence to keep going when it gets tough and when you hit those roadblocks, you're going to struggle. And I tell people often, it's like, if you are consistent and persistent and you work on something for a little bit every single day or most days for 2 years, you're going to have a certain level of success. And that can seem like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, like it really isn't. So that's kind of what I found, at least.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And it's hard sometimes with this shiny object we all have, right? Of wanting it now. We want that Amazon treatment, right? It should be here tomorrow. So
totally.
I'm glad you brought that up. So one thing I'm curious too is that I was kind of doing the same thing, and I literally called it my quarter life crisis as well, because I quit at 29. And one of the things is people kind of looked at me weird, right? I'm at work. I wasn't really working. I was blogging. So I was learning about WordPress. I'm watching YouTube videos and Tony Robbins and like figuring out this whole new world out there. Did you have that kind of like people in your circle or maybe at work, like being like, hey, what are you doing? Maybe you should play it safe kind of thing? Or how did you kind of deal with that, or if you even had that at all?
Oh, 100%. I still remember I had a conversation with kind of an extended family member that's like, what are you doing? It's like, you've got like, a stable job, like it's a better job than most people's, a small firm where they were looking at it. It's like, yeah, like, we're going to make you partner someday. You could be here for your entire career. Why would you do this risky thing? And it really came down to the fact I wasn't happy. Like I was not happy doing what I was doing. And I knew if I didn't make a change, I never was going to be happy. And so I would tell people is like, until I can make myself happy and figure out what I want, I'm not going to be able to make anybody else happy or help anyone else in any kind of meaningful way. And so I was really selfish at the time. It took like a selfish decision to say, hey, like I'm quitting, I'm leaving, I'm doing my own thing. I had a girlfriend at the time. We've been together for like a year and a half. And it wasn't a conversation where it's like, hey, I'm thinking about, leaving my job, or I'm thinking about moving to Thailand. It was pretty much like, okay, I left my job, that happened. And now it's like, oh, I'm going to go move to Thailand for at least 6-7 months. And I've got to do this for myself. And we ended up breaking up during that period of time. And we got back together, and she's my wife now. So it all worked out in the end. But if it wasn't for being a little bit selfish early on to focus on the things I knew I needed to do for myself, then I never would be where I'm at now. And I never would have helped all the people that I've helped through Location Rebel.
Yes. I love that you said happiness, right? No one ever asks if you're happy, right? They're like, hey, how's your job? How's this? How's that? It's like, are you happy? Right. And that's like one of those things. And when I left my job too, I felt like I sat my parents down, and like, my girlfriend was like kind of the only one that knew, but I was like close friends and family. And I felt like you're like coming out as like a drug addict or something. People are like, ooh, what are you doing? Why would you leave a 6-figure job? Right. And it's like, hey, I'm I'm not happy. And so I'm glad that you talked about that. And right. It's tough sometimes to kind of overcome the people closest to you, maybe wondering what you're doing.
For sure. And I think a lot of it is just recognize, like, there's never a right time, but recognizing like, when a reasonable time is. And for me, like I, was in the relatively early on in my career. I've been in my job for about 3 years. We're in the middle of a giant recession. I just got a pay cut, so it wasn't like I was making a ton of money. So it was kind of like, this feels scary, but at the same time, what's the absolute worst case scenario? I go travel, I run out of money, I come back and I get a day job. Like, okay, like the life experience that I gained during those, that period of time is probably going to make it worth it. And fortunately, I've never had to go back and get a day job, and my bank account has just kind of continued to go up, throughout that period of time. But just being willing to recognize an opportunity and actually take action, I think that that's where most people struggle. They might have an opportunity, but they're like, oh, like I can't leave my job. Like, even if it's promising something better, there's still that uncertainty. Tim Ferriss once had a quote where he said, 95% of people will choose unhappiness over uncertainty. And I think that's 100% true.
Wow, that's really, really true. And I'm glad you said it too, again, because I heard it twice and it stuck out to me as you took action. And that is a common thing among all the successful entrepreneurs that I've been lucky enough to have on the show, is that you're not just sitting there thinking, they're going out and they're writing the blog posts, even if no one's reading them, or starting the store or whatever it is. So I'm glad you said that. And now that you're at this point, so you were doing it for 11 months. What was it like, first off, to quit? Because I think that's, or to give notice, or however you did it. And then you went straight to Thailand. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the whole transition is a little kind of weird. It's actually kind of a funny story. So at one point, my boss came up to me and he's like, Sean, if you can think of any creative ways to save the company money, like I'd love to hear about them. We're a small business, revenue's down, like the recession's hit. And so every day, like I mentioned, I was talking to my buddy Ryan in Hawaii. He's like, dude, you got to get out here. This place is amazing. And so thinking I was like the smartest guy in the world, I put together a 6-page proposal. It was kind of a remote work proposal.
Nice.
I said, I will take a 50% pay cut on a trial basis for 3 months if you let me work remotely from Hawaii. I'm going to open us up to a new client base. I'm going to make the company more secure because we're going to have to figure out how to like handle laptops and all of that type of stuff. You're not going to have to pay for my parking. It's going to allow you guys to travel more if we can figure out this kind of remote agreement. And so over the course of the next month, we had probably 2 meetings, talking about logistics, how it could work, what might happen. And finally, it was like September sometime, they called me into their office and they're like, hey, Sean, wanted to let you know we've decided not to accept your proposal, but we will accept this as your resignation. And I'm like, whoa, like, hold on a second. Like, you asked me for creative way to save the company money. I bring one to you. We talk about all the logistics, and now you're saying that I'm resigning? Like that? No, like I had no intention of resigning. And they're like, you made it pretty clear that you weren't happy, and if this didn't work, you were going to leave. I was like, no, that wasn't how this happened. And so what ended up happening was we went back and forth, and they kind of gave me an offer to stick around. They're like, well, if you did still have a job here, would you want to stay? How would you want to do it? And I looked at them and I said, you know what, after the way I've been treated and all this, like, no, I don't think I'd want to. They're like, all right, you've got 10 minutes to pack up your stuff and get out of here. And so
wow, that's a big day for you then.
Yeah. So it's kind of one of those, like, did I leave? Did I fire? Did I quit? It's kind of muddy. But I did make the decision to say, you know what? No, I'm going to go do my own thing. And so that was the catalyst. That was October 20th, 2009. The next week I wrote a post, or a couple days later, I wrote a post called My Last Day. It was the post that I'd been wanting to write for 5 months, leading up to it since I started the job, or since I started the blog. And I get an email from a guy named Dan Andrews. And so Dan at the time didn't really have any blog or podcast. And now he's got a podcast called The Tropical MBA, one of the most popular lifestyle, business, digital nomad podcasts out there. Community called the Dynamite Circle for people that have online businesses. And he said, Sean, I think what you're doing is awesome. I'm looking to bring an American dude out to Asia. I'll pay you $800 a month for your basic living expenses. You work for me part-time. I'll teach you online marketing. And the rest of the time you do whatever you want. And so I was like, okay, we've got an opportunity here. And so 2 months, month and a half later, flew to Bangkok, met this random dude from the internet at 1 a.m. at the Bangkok airport. And it was the best decision I ever could have made. Worked with them for like 2 years. My buddy Ryan, who was going to start his world trip in Central America, ended up flying to Thailand. And so for the first like 3 weeks, we all went down to the islands. The CEO of the company came up from San Diego. We like traveled around, we partied. And I was like, guys, like, you're paying me. I got to get to work. I just like, dude, there'll be plenty of time for work. Like, let's just enjoy this, get to know each other while we're here. And that was that. So that was kind of, I started the site in May of 2009. And by January of 2010, that was, had done the proposal, left the job, sold the car, made the decision to go to Thailand. And the way it all kind of came full circle was February of 2010. I'd gotten back from the islands. I had an apartment in Bangkok, and Gillivo was coming through Bangkok on, some sort of tour. And we got coffee at a Starbucks 11 months, since the first time we met. And we had been getting together like once every like 6 weeks. And he was kind of, had an unofficial mentor type role. But to see that in 11 months, I went from being like, I need to do something, I need to change my life, to living in, Asia and having a blog and supporting myself. Like, it was a pretty crazy transition.
Yeah, no suit and tie, I'm guessing, when you guys met that second time.
No suit and tie, for sure.
What a cool story. I mean, I've had a lot of awesome guests on here, and I've, just read so many of Chris's books and other stuff, but that has to be one of my favorites. I mean, to just have that opportunity come up, man, I think the universe was speaking with you there. So that's
one of those, like, recognizing when an opportunity happens. And, it was kind of one of those things where I was like, this guy, Dan, like, hit me up. He's like, hey, you want to come to Asia? I was like, this seems really scary, highly questionable, from this dude that like shot like a, internship video from his hut in the Philippines wearing like a tank top and Crocs. Was just like, I don't know. And, but then the day I left, Chris also reached out. He said, hey, I'm looking for an affiliate manager. I need someone to help me run my affiliate program. I'll pay $25 an hour to, work a few hours a month on this. And it's like, it's not going to solve all your problems, but at least start bringing a little bit of income. And so it was kind of one of these things, like all the like, seeds that I had planted through the blog and through the relationships. Once I left, they all kind of came to a head and said, hey, here's your opportunity. Here's where this is going to pay off. Are you willing to do it? Are you going to take, kind of heed the call or whatever? And I did, and haven't looked back since.
Man, so I love that you said the planting the seeds too, right? Because a lot of times we don't see the results like we talked about earlier. So to see them all come out at the perfect time, that is amazing. And what were the first few years like? I mean, how long did you live over there? I know that, for a lot of entrepreneurs that first year, and myself included, that was tough. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. Friends and family were doubting me. I was doubting myself. You're in Thailand at this time. What was that like? And maybe if you could share some tips on kind of how others can make that transition a little smoother.
Yeah. So it's a crazy time to look back on that. And you have like, on a daily basis, you have big swings up and down, like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing ever, to holy crap, like, what am I doing? Like, this is never going to support itself. But frankly, like, I was fortunate in the sense that while I was in Thailand, like, my apartment cost $200 a month. Like, I would eat dollar pad thai every day. I drink like 75-cent beers. So like all in, I was like, it cost me less than $1,000 a month to live. So I wasn't too stressed about the money until I came back to the States. So I was in Bangkok for like 7 or 8 months. Came back to the States to, make things work with my relationship and, that kind of stuff. So that got a little bit scary, trying to support myself. But, at the time it was this like magical, like moment in time where there was probably 24 other people that I got to know that were doing similar things to me, from all over America, all over the world, frankly, that were building these kind of lifestyle businesses. So we would get together and work at a co-working space there. And then we'd go like, drink and party 4 or 5 nights a week. And we'd travel down to the islands, and then we'd work a ton. So it was like this cool experience where everybody was learning together. Everybody was, testing and building together. And everybody was just kind of playing together and having a good time. So I look back on those times really fondly. And so the lesson I would take from that, and the thing that was so crucial to my success early on, is having accountability and having community. So I had accountability to Dan and Chris. So I'm working with them directly. It's basically Dan's like, hey, I'm going to teach you internet marketing, and I'm going to teach you SEO. I'm going to teach you how to write, all this kind of stuff. But you're going to need to put in the time to actually learn it and apply it and test it within our business. And so, I was learning all this stuff and testing it, and it was working and having success. But if it wasn't for him, I might have just been a little bit more casual about it. Be like, we'll figure it out eventually and whatnot. So having that accountability was huge. And then also the community. So I've got this group of people that I'm, we're all building similar types of businesses. We're seeing each other every day. We're helping people or helping each other work on problems. We're talking about our frustrations. We're talking about our dreams, our goals, our businesses, and having that and being able to just constantly, spitball ideas was absolutely huge. And Ryan, in the early days, he was kind of the accountability for me. It's like before I had done anything, talking to him every day after he left his job, he moved to Asia or he moved to Hawaii. I was like, okay, like, yeah, I do want to do this. Like, I need to continue to be held accountable for these things I said I wanted to do. So that was huge. And that was like, looking back, that was one of the reasons that I ended up creating Location Rebel Academy, our premium community, because, like you were saying, it's like when your friends and family are like, what, you're going to leave this 6-figure job? Why would you do this? It's like, for most of us in our day-to-day life, people are just going to think you're crazy. It's like, even though it's become more popular and a lot of people are making, livings on the internet, it's still like relatively, it's a relatively small amount of people, and there still is a stigma around it. So surrounding yourself by people that get it, with people that get it, with people that have the same goals as you, that's absolutely huge. So I think that is the biggest, most important piece of advice I can give. And I had kind of a weird way of doing it, moving to like Asia and having it. And then the next year spent 3 months living in Bali, with a bunch of other entrepreneurs kind of doing the same thing, but it doesn't have to be in person. You can get it digitally. You can get it in different places.
Environment. So that's like you basically had an ongoing mastermind. It sounds like that is amazing.
Yeah, a little bit. And like, it's funny because even to this day, like there's like my buddies, Derek and Clay, like they came out to Bangkok. Like I had never met him in person, knew him like via the internet and said, hey, you guys should move to Bangkok. And they're like, okay. And so like a few weeks later, literally moved to Bangkok right in the middle of a longer story, but there was like riots and a coup going on, and it was not the best time to come out there because I had to flee the country 10 days later. But to this day, 2 of my best friends, we still once a year, like take mastermind retreats together and help each other with our businesses. And so it's been cool to see how a lot of those relationships have, still 10 years later, been a part of my life.
So how has your business continued to evolve? I know you have, the Rebel site, Location Rebel, and then you have the golf membership site. Can you talk about kind of what it's been like as more and more people are joining? Is it something that you're just continually growing? You have a community? Like, kind of tell us about what you're doing now so people can kind of understand it a little bit more.
Yeah. So, Location Rebel Academy, we now have over 3,000 members from over 40 different countries. I still remember the day I launched it. It was like opening up beta launch. I was hoping to get 20 people in there. I said there's going to cap it at 20 people. I was like, if I get half of that in the next week, I'm going to be thrilled. And we're selling for $297. Hit go. It was July 26, 2011. Within 48 minutes, we had not only sold out all 20 spots, but I'd sold 4 more before I could even close the sales page. And so to see, I made like $7,000 that day, and to see, from 20 people up to, over 3,000 now, it's crazy to see how many success stories have come out of it. How much accountability and community there is in the forums and the conversations that are happening every day. So that's still a big part of everything I do. Lately we've started, over the last decade, I've published over 750 blog posts at Location Rebel, which is crazy to think about. And so I've started this year really shifting from writing to focusing on video. It's kind of like, hey, all these, blog posts that I've written, like I could do the same thing in kind of a more creative and unique way with the video stuff. So that's been kind of one of the new focuses, which I've been having a lot of fun with. And that's all continuing to grow and do its own thing. But as you mentioned, in 2012, I started a golf website called Breaking 80, where it was essentially doing product reviews and documenting my quest to play the top 100 golf courses in the world. In doing that, I had a lot of people that had reached out that were members of these top 100 very exclusive golf courses. And they were like, hey, if you're ever in New York, I'm a member of such and such club. I'd love to have you out as my guest. So I started thinking, I built this network of people that were members of these very exclusive, desirable clubs. And I was like, there's got to be a way to connect those people, because there's this like very small subset of the golf world that is a member of a cool course and likes to show off their home course. They like to, show it off to strangers that'll appreciate it. They like to travel and experience new places, and they like to geek out about golf on the internet. And so I was like, if I can find, there's gotta be a way to connect those people and turn it into a business for myself. And so in doing that, I created about 2.5 years ago, something called the 80 Club. which is essentially a golf society for private club members that fit those 3 criteria. And so now we're up to like 225 members from some of the coolest golf clubs all over the world. And that in and of itself is now a full-time business, which I never expected it to be. It was just this kind of thing I threw up there on a whim. And, within 48 hours of putting it out on Instagram, I had 50 applications. So that was pretty cool. So now I'm kind of splitting my time between Location Rebel, from the golf stuff, a couple other random things that are floating out there. And it's awesome. It's great to be able to build businesses around your hobbies and your passions. The problem lies when you have something that's successful. So you start something new and then that becomes successful. And then you add the membership site on there and that becomes successful. And so now I feel like I've got like 3 or 4 full-time jobs and none of them are getting full-time attention. So as you grow, I think that's something to keep in mind. And that's certainly been one of my bigger struggles, is how do you divide your time and how do you continue growing and how do you serve the community and the audience in a way that's, going to allow it to be as good as it possibly can be while still maintaining a life and not spreading yourself too thin.
Awesome problem to have, though, right? Nothing that I know, nothing that I know you can't figure out, because, they have, obviously a big team. It sounds like you work mainly with like virtual assistants, or do you have full-time employees? Like, what does that look like for you?
No, I'm like the epitome of a lifestyle entrepreneur. So I've got Liz, who's my right-hand girl for Location Rebel. She joined the course in 2012 or 2011, actually. A year later, had a ton of success, emailed me to say, hey, because of you, I'm leaving my job. I'm going full-time as a freelance writer. I said, kind of like Chris did with me, it's like, hey, I've got, a little bit of a need to bring someone on to help me with some of the community stuff. Are you interested? And that was 2012. And 7 years later, she's now living in Portland. She's still working with me part-time. And she's really the only person I've got. I do all the golf stuff on my own. Occasionally I'll hire a developer, designer or something for some of the site stuff. But we're finally hitting that tipping point where bringing, a couple more people on board for various things is probably going to be the next move.
Man, well, if you need a golf speaker, your guy.
Absolutely.
So learning too, I mean, you've made money in so many different ways, right? You got freelance writing, you got blogging, you've had courses, affiliates, membership sites. Can you talk about and you also talked about video too, which is something I kind of want to pick your brain on.
Yeah.
What do you think is some of the great spots to get started? Because I know a lot of people, a lot of my listeners and people on my email list, they're a bit overwhelmed sometimes and they don't know where to begin, or they might try something for a month. Like you said, it won't work. And then they'll go right back to square one. So what do you think are some good opportunities here in like 2019, 2020 to start that side hustle or that first online business?
Totally. Well, first off, you should go to locationrebel.com. We've got, like I said, hundreds of blog posts all about how to start these types of businesses. But I generally recommend kind of a 3-step process. And so the first part is learning the relevant skills. So copywriting, SEO, the basics of design, how to set up a blog, all of those things, no matter what you do online, those are going to, allow you to be successful. And kind of the 1B of that is to create your training ground. You can read all the blog posts in the world, you can read all the books in the world, but until you get hands-on and actually start doing it yourself, you're never really going to learn. And so that's where I'm a huge advocate of starting a website. If you have no idea what to do and you want to take action on something, buy a domain, get a hosting account, install WordPress. That's like step 1. Even if you have no clue where that's going to go, that is a forward step you can take that's going to get you closer to your goal. So that's kind of step 1. Training ground, start building those skills. Step 2, in my opinion, is I think you should freelance before you do anything else, specifically freelance writing. If you need to make money soon, quickly, freelance writing is the best way to make money on the internet because it's a skill we already have. There is so much demand for it. As the internet grows, so does the need for high quality content and high quality writing. There is no shortage of ways to find the work. There's thousands of websites out there. In Location Rebel Academy, we teach a very specific process for actually, sending personal outreach things to get clients. And so this was kind of the path I took. So I started my website to start, my training ground and started learning everything. Then I started freelancing, doing SEO, doing freelance writing to pay the bills. And then the third step is creating what I call your legacy business, the thing that you want to be doing for the rest of your life. So for me, an example of that would be Breaking 80. I started Location Rebel to learn everything, started building that brand, started using that to freelance. As that started making more money, it gave me the, freedom and flexibility to start Breaking 80, which now has allowed me to play. When I started the site, I had never played a private golf course in my life. And now I'm a member of one. I've played, about half of the best golf courses in the world. I get sent free golf stuff all the time. I'm well known in the golf space. So it's brought all of these, fringe benefits that have enhanced my enjoyment of the hobby and the thing that I love to do, while also making me a full-time living. And so that's the path that I've seen people have the most success with, rather than jumping straight into the affiliate marketing, straight into the blogging, which frankly can be a difficult thing to do if you don't have the skills to grow it. Start with freelancing, build up your income, build up your confidence, build up your skills for how to set up that website. All that stuff you're learning is going to translate into, whatever business you decide to start later on. And when you've got that income coming in, it just takes off so much of the stress. You've got options. When you're making $3,000 a month to say, okay, either like that's all I need, I can quit my job and go backpack around the world, or I can supplement my day job, or I can quit and then still have money coming in so I can focus on that thing I really want to be doing. So that's kind of, the reason that I recommend that specific process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's literally the 3-step process that I did as well. I started the blog. It was horrible. I remember I even had kind of a friend, I guess a guy I graduated college with, like email me and be like, you should stop. You're not a good writer. And you know what? I'm laughing now because you're right. I wasn't a good writer. Like you talked about going back in those 2009 archives. Sometimes you gotta start somewhere, right? And so,
well, yeah. And the thing I look back, even though I cringe at the quality of the writing back in 2009, I did this just a couple of weeks ago. I was going back and looking at stuff, and I was like, man, my writing wasn't the best, but I was pretty entertaining. It was like I had a lot of personality, much more personality than I have in my writing now, because now you start writing like how-to posts or stuff for like search. And I kind of realized, I was like, oh, a lot of that personality is gone and I need to get it back. Like that's part of why the video has been so helpful, because I can really like add my personality, my sarcasm, add all that stuff in there. And so even if you're not the best writer, having a personality and being yourself will allow you to overcome, your, deficiencies, in proper grammar and spelling and all that stuff. And still have like a certain baseline, but
personality is key. I love that you said that, because so many people, like you said, you get in that SEO mind frame. Like how many times am I using my keyword? And it's like, wait, human beings are still going to read this. So we probably better act like it. And with video too, I know you just kind of have been doing more of that as opposed to the writing. I think that's something that's a big opportunity. Do you think people should start maybe a blog versus starting on YouTube, or do you think that you should always kind of own that first domain and get started with that first?
Yeah, so there's no right or wrong answer. Obviously, you've got people that are, making their entire living on Instagram, their entire living on YouTube, their entire living through the blog. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. The way I recommend and what I suggest is I think everybody should have a blog or a website. Like, have a place where people can find you in Google, have a place where if someone's like considering working with you or wants to know more about you, they can, get a sense of who you are. They can get a sense of your personality. They can see that you're the real deal. Having that is super, super valuable. So everything that I've built, has been rooted in the blog first. So Location Rebel, Breaking 80. I've got a cocktail website now, that I actually haven't told anyone about. It's kind of my brand new thing. But having that is key. And then I suggest having at least one other way for people to find you, for people to interact with you. And so for Location Rebel, it's been YouTube. Like that's like the medium I've chosen. Shooting those videos, building a community on YouTube has been really good. With golf, like I've mostly ignored YouTube and I've gone all in on Instagram. My biggest golf community is within Instagram. And so I've kind of found that, if you're trying to do everything, it can be too much, especially for me where I've got like multiple brands. So it's like, I'm trying to do YouTube and I'm trying to do Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest and Twitter and a blog and a podcast. Like it's too much. And it gets super overwhelming. And what happens is you end up half-assing or like, quarter-assing all of it, and you don't make any traction. So I'd rather see people go all in on one other medium to actually get to the point where they hit that critical mass and they have success and they have that community and that's sending traffic before you start, spreading yourself too thin. Like for sure, get all the domains. Make sure you're like, when you come up with your clever name, buy the domain name, get the YouTube handle, get the Instagram handle, but really go all in on just, two things. And so for me, it's usually a blog and one other medium.
Don't be spread too thin. I think that's one that I've struggled with as well. So appreciate you saying that. Hopefully my subconscious is listening.
Well, and I'm not saying I'm the best at it. I'm still spread too thin.
We're always learning, right?
Constantly taking new stuff on, but
you're an ambitious guy. So it's like I said, it's a good problem. So
for sure.
Before we get into some of the last few questions, I always like to ask kind of about some of the success habits that you've had, because you've been doing this for 10 years. Like you said, it can be stressful. Entrepreneur life, I quickly found that it's a roller coaster. You go from the best day ever to the worst day ever. Do you have any daily rituals or hacks or habits that you do that you think have helped you out and kind of sped up success for you?
Yeah, for sure. One goes back to the consistency, and specifically the consistency of writing. I'm not going to say I write every single day, but I usually write something most days. And doing that for 10 years, I mean, when you look at it, like that's how I make a living, whether it's through writing sales emails, writing blog posts, creating courses, creating, YouTube or Instagram posts with long, descriptions or whatever. The consistency of that writing is huge, because I think even with videos or podcasting, a lot of that is still based in that writing habit. Also, I think copywriting is the best skill anybody can have. So studying that, learning how to be persuasive with your words, that's, time well spent. I'll also say
like waking up early or meditating or anything kind of on the self-care side of things.
Yeah. So I exercise in some form or another pretty much every single day. It's a blessing and a curse where I've got lots of hobbies and lots of interests. And so I tend to do a lot of different things rather than get good at like one thing, but it's like pretty much every day I'll either run, spin, swim, golf, play tennis, basketball, like one of those things. And so not only is that giving me something to look forward to each day, because you're mixing things up, it's kept me in pretty good shape. It gives me a break in the middle of the day. I've learned that I tend to have a really big slump in the afternoons. And so rather than just sitting at my computer, feeling like I'm going to be productive and not doing anything, that's when I'll either like set up podcasts or like interviews. That's when I'll go, get exercise or whatever. So that's huge. Also, I try and meditate for 5 minutes in the morning. It's not like a huge thing, but just enough to kind of remind myself of, it's more of like a gratefulness practice where it's like, where you are is a privilege. It's not a right. Don't take it for granted. Work hard, continue to do what you're doing, because you're very fortunate to be in this position, and that can change at any time. I also, at least, 3 or 4 days a week, try and get out into nature. So it's about a half a mile walk into Forest Park here in Portland. So big urban park with trails. When we spend so much time in front of our, computer and our screens, just getting away from that, like I try not to bring my phone, just kind of reconnecting with like the real world, I think is something that makes it a lot easier to come back and get more excited about creating in the online world.
Well said. We don't have the forest here in Arizona, so the golf course is my nature. You get it though.
Hey, well, even like I tell people, it's like the benefits of like play. A lot of times where it's like if I'm stressed or if I need to work through something or I'm excited, I'll go out and play a round of golf. And it's like usually when I do that and I'm thinking it's like, oh, I should be working or I should be doing this. By the time I'm done, I feel so much better and I'm so much more excited about going back to work. And I've got so many more ideas. That golf has been actually one of the best things, even though you think of it as something that takes up all this time and it's like play and it's not real work. Even aside from the stuff with Breaking 80, just getting out there and using that as my escape into nature has been super powerful.
And you just never know who you'll meet on the golf course too, right? So,
to say the least.
Awesome. Well, you have so many cool projects going on. I know people are going to want to connect with you. So before I ask my last question, love to just figure out, again, where you want people to learn more about you, whether it's Instagram or YouTube. Just let us know here. And again, anything that you want people to learn about as far as programs, because I know you have a lot as well.
Totally. I mean, Location Rebel Academy is the big thing. That's our course, our community. If you want to build a lifestyle business that gives you the time and the freedom to do the things you want to do, it allows you to kind of make the transitions that you and I have made out of a day job or whatever. I honestly think it's one of the best resources on the internet for it. So you can check that out at locationrebel.com/join. If you want our kind of free 6-step course that introduces you to this process that I kind of gave a brief overview of here, locationrebel.com/hi. You can start getting that immediately, which is pretty cool. And then youtube.com/locationrebel, facebook.com/locationrebel. And if you're into golf, Breaking 80 with 80 spelt out. So, it's probably a relatively small subset of people out there, but been a lot a lot of fun as well. So
yep, I got golf friends that are listening. They better be. So
there you go. At Location Rebel on Instagram as well. So
okay, yeah, I'll link to all those too in the show notes, so that way people can click on all those. So cool. Well, again, you have a lot going on, and congrats on everything you've done. And for the last question, what do you think is the number one thing that has made you as successful in the online business in the last 10 years as you have?
Yeah. So rather than give the answer that I've given a couple times of consistency, I'm going to say not necessarily personality, but just authenticity. I like to think my gauge of success is if, whenever we inevitably meet in person and play around a golf, I hope at the end of it, you're like, yeah, you're exactly who I thought you were going to be. You're the same person online as you are in person. And I try really hard not to fall in the camp of like scammy internet marketing guru that's going to teach you how to make millions of dollars, and more be like, I'm the random dude that figured out a few things that happened to work, that I would like to show you because maybe they'll work for you. I really try and be as authentic as I can. And that's why you can go back and read so many posts in the archives over the last 10 years about the things that I've failed at, the things that I've sucked at, the insecurities, because that's all a real part of the process. And so, I think in some ways, maybe that's kept me from making millions and millions of dollars going too far down kind of the internet marketing world. But I think what it has done is it's allowed me to, have longevity, and it's allowed me to bring in the right type of people that resonate with the kind of just normal vibe or whatever that I try and put out on my stuff. So I think that authenticity is something that's really lacking in the internet world today. And so I try and do the best I can with it.
Well, you've been extremely authentic here in the episode, and again, just reading all your content, and it was exactly how I wanted it to be, and a lot even better. So thank you again for spending an hour with me and my audience today. So really, really appreciate you being here.
No, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thanks again, man.
All right. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that episode with Sean. I know I did. We have a lot in common, and I just love that he went after a dream 10 years ago and still crushing it, helping thousands of people build online businesses, get out of jobs they hate, and again, just create a life that they love. So I have a lot in common with Sean, and I'm really, really excited with this interview, and I hope you guys use this as inspiration to take some action in your life. Now, it's not to say you need to quit your job tomorrow like we did, but again, life is too short to spend it working at a job you hate. So if there's something you want to do, there is an online business that can support you, whether it's building an online course, a membership site, a blog, a podcast, a YouTube, or something else. There's so much opportunity out there. So again, I don't want to leave you guys just fired up and not knowing where to go. So make sure to take a look at all of Sean's resources down below. His website, his content is amazing. And again, you can always grab my email course as well on starting your own online business down in the show notes. So thank you guys again for listening. Again, hopefully this is inspiring, but make sure that you're taking some action, because I don't want you just getting fired up without actually working towards your goals and your dreams. So again, this is your time. If I can do it, if Sean can do it, then I know that you can do it. So if we can help in any way, please let either of us know. Thank you again for listening. Please forward this to someone that you think could use a little bit of motivation or is in a job that they hate and could get some use from this episode. I would really, really appreciate it. And as always, sharing it and tagging us on social media would be amazing. So thank you for listening or watching. And as always, I hope you have an epic day.